Hello and welcome back to my lovely regular listeners, and welcome to you if you are a new listener tuning in. So, in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about being intentional with your actions. So, this is incredibly important when you are someone who is trying to shift, move forward, transform, do big things, create things, step out of your comfort zone, all the good stuff. But it's also a really important to tune in and become really intentional with the actual action steps you're taking. Because especially if you're scrolling through in the online world and there's a lot of noise in the personal development industry as a whole and in the spiritual circles and whichever kind of communities that you are involved with or you're observing. And sometimes you can get really lost in the noise. And I've definitely had times along my own journey, my personal development and also my business development journeys, where if you're not careful, you can be very sort of sucked away with the excitement out there in terms of what other people are doing, the trends, the things that are pulling you away. And it can be very distracting. So, I want to just talk you through in this episode of ways of how to start to become really intentional with the actions that you're taking, because your energy is precious. Your energy is incredibly powerful. And when we really focus with our energy in a very strategic way, in a very aligned way, we can create the most amazing shifts and transformations in our lives. And we as humans are so much more powerful than often we've given ourselves credit for, and often, in the way that we've been taught about our abilities. And the energy of do, just keep going and keep moving and do as much as you can possibly fit into a day. Those energies are, they serve a purpose. Yes, they've served humanity to a certain level, but things are shifting now. And the energies now are not so much that, it is more moving us into this new direction, these higher frequency ways of being. And you're going to start hearing this and seeing this a lot more over the years. And it's already very present here anyway. But it's this idea of, yes, we're going to take actions, make them aligned, but using our energy and being really intentional with the way that we go about things. And I found that when I've shifted from that old mentality of, the more I do, the more successful, the more things I tick off on my to-do list, is the way I used to do it, being a former lawyer, and that's the way I knew, into the way I do things now, is very much tuning in and being very deliberate, very intentional. And it sort of requires like a laser focus of just being able to block out everything else that other people around you are doing. Maybe it makes sense to them, but it's getting really finely tuned into what is the next step for you? What is it that's really calling you? So first thing then, kind of like I'm just going to lay this out for you. So let's just get in. First thing is get really clear about what it is you want. That is always the number one thing. And a lot of the people I end up working with at some point along their journey is sometimes they're just missing the clarity piece of, they haven't really even fully worked out what it is they want. And sometimes that looks like playing too small and not being even really honest with themselves as to the extent of their vision, the areas of their life or business or both that they really want to be massively shifting and transforming. And sometimes people just don't have a clue about what they really want because they've never really given themselves an opportunity, or they've never given themselves permission to actually even ask the question. So I want to encourage you, if you already know what you want, great, you can just move on to the next piece of this. But if you don't, really sit down and get some clarity about what it is that you want. And for some people that requires getting to know yourself a little bit more, maybe before you can even answer that question fully. But for many of you, you'll already know this, and then you can move on to the next piece. So the next piece is then, off the back of what you have identified, you know that you want this, you know that this is what's calling you, right? In life, in business, in multiple areas, whichever lights you up. Then it's tuning in and asking yourself what requires your focus first. That will actually help you shift forwards, that will help you shift towards what it is that you want. And the reason I want to just start with tuning in is because what most people do is when they kind of they get clear about what they want, they immediately look out there. How are other people doing it? What do other people do here? And not to say that there's not a benefit from seeking out experts. So I'll use that term loosely because I'll speak about that in a moment. But seeking out other people to assist, of course, and that's what I do with people. But it's very really important along that is to not just automatically jump into out there, because very often you might be somebody that's come in and you're doing it in a different way. You're doing it in a way that's unique to you. And again, this is what I get a lot of when people come to work with me. It's often off the back of they've invested hundreds and thousands of pounds or dollars into blueprints and strategies and ways of doing things that nothing wrong with those strategies, but for that particular person, it wasn't what they actually needed. It wasn't the thing that was going to really move them forwards. So people get very disillusioned, and then sometimes they just give up on their dream, or they just wipe their finances out, or they just get very disheartened generally because they feel that it didn't work for them. So I want to just reassure you, I've had so many people come to me from that place of saying they invested tens and tens of thousands of pounds or dollars into these ways, and for somebody else they could have been absolutely perfect, but for those particular individuals it wasn't just what they needed at that time. Maybe if they'd have done it at another time or at another point in their journey, it might have had a different impact. But often it's somebody else's way of doing it that just doesn't resonate with your soul. This is always about your soul, because your soul brings in a blueprint and your soul knows already what you're here to create. So tuning in is such an important part of this, is tuning in and really asking what is requiring your focus first. So this is not looking at what they're doing. And let's think about, if you're in the kind of coaching or business or personal development industry, or kind of any area really, you can so easily look at what they're doing, or you can look at what your friends are doing or the people that you know. And most of the time we look at our circle of our community, our family, our friends. Those are the people that are closest to us in physical proximity. And we're looking at them and we're looking at how it's worked for them, or often how it hasn't worked for them, what they're doing and what they're not doing. So that doesn't work. Tuning into what those experts tell you, like I said, experts, I'll use that term loosely, because what really is an expert? And I don't know. I would never call myself an expert in anything. And I kind of make it a point to say to my clients, I am not an expert in you. You are the expert in you. I can facilitate things, and I always do. I can bring in transmissions, codes, activations. We do healings. We do whatever it takes to shift the energy, all of that great stuff. But it's always been about helping you tune into you. That is so important and so, so much needed. So it's not about what experts tell you that you must do. I've defied a lot of expert advice constantly, and every time I do, it pays off every time. It's also not what your head says you should do. And this is another aspect which sometimes people can get a little bit tripped up about, because you might sit and think you're tuning in, but if you don't know how to sort of drop deeper into yourself, you might get caught up in, well, my head says I should dot dot dot. So I'll give you an example. When I first started out in my business, this was in 2015, and I just got the download from my soul, this calling, this deep nudge that wouldn't leave me alone. That's how you know it's real. And it was telling me, kind of set yourself up and create this business for yourself. This is what you're going to be doing now, and you're going to be doing work with people in the world. It was a huge revelation for me back then, because it came in before I thought I was even ready. So it came in. So because that came in and that was fully aligned, I thought I was tuning in, but I didn't really know how to back then. So I sat with my pen and paper and literally wrote out a list of what actions I should take, um, with moving forwards. And then my head, of course, told me all the things that I should be doing. And there was a lot of shoulds on that list. So, for example, it told me that I needed to have a logo, I needed to set up a website, I needed to set up all these structures, and I needed to get my branding on point. So this was really early on in my business. And use this example, by the way, it could be in your business, but it could be in your personal life. It's the same thing, but just use your own example. But I spent money and time. I spent months trying to get this logo. I don't even use that now. It's like I use some kind of simple thing right now. I'm sure I'll expand it. But back then, it wasn't even the same logo. So it was this logo that I'd spent quite a few £100s when I didn't even make any money off the business, creating this logo because I thought that that's what I should do. Businesses have logos. I leapt in and I think I spent like £600 on a couple of hours sitting with a branding coach. She was wonderful. She was lovely. She inspired me greatly. But in terms of what I should be doing, it didn't really move me forward. It made me feel good, but it didn't move the business forward because the branding was something that should have come later. Definitely should have come much later. I hadn't even worked out my messaging, my kind of soul purpose work behind what I was doing. So my head was jumping into all this structure stuff and aesthetics, cosmetic stuff, because I really didn't know. I saw that's what everybody else was doing. So I just give you that as an example of how it doesn't serve, and it really didn't do anything at all in moving me forwards. It really didn't. It just didn't. But lessons learned, right? Really great lessons. So it's always about tuning in. And beyond the I should do this, I should do that, it's what is calling you. What if you were tuning into yourself? And I always talk about higher self. I'll probably do another episode on that separately, but tuning into that higher level version of yourself. If he or she was, it's that version of you. So if he or she was already there, you were already there, what would that higher level version of you be stepping into? And you can get a lot of guidance from that, or you can just drop in and ask, if I was connecting into my soul, what does my soul guide me to take the action in? Like, what is the thing that's calling you? So close your eyes, maybe ground, breathe, block out the outside and really tune in. And even if you don't know the answers, practice, because this comes when you practice and you start to be able to receive your own guidance. And that's when you can get really intentional with what you're doing. So it's getting really clear, first of all, about what you want. And then secondly, tuning in and asking what is requiring your focus first. That will actually help you shift forwards. And then from there, you're just lasering in because you can't do everything all at once. Again, lessons learned for me. I used to try and just kind of do everything. And if you're visionary as well, you're going to be thinking about so many different moving parts in your life, your business. You're going to not just want to improve one area, you're going to probably think about 22 different areas. So it's just a reminder to, when you're being really intentional, just to focus in. And I like to chunk things down now. So sometimes I look at, sometimes I do 3 months, but even then I find that because I change so much, I kind of scale back now into the month at a time. And then even beyond that, I tune in weekly and daily. So even daily now, I have a practice of what is requiring my focus today. Yes, I have a to-do list. I could be working on all these different areas in my life and improving all these things. Well, what's calling me today? And then making a decision or decisions and getting really focused. So just lasering it in, understanding that you can come back to everything else and it's not going to go anywhere, but you only need to focus on things one at a time. And it really, really, I'm sort of a believer now that multitasking is bullshit. I used to pride myself on being a multitasker. And I find that the more present I am in my life now, the less I can multitask, the less I even want to, because I like to do things now really focused, one thing at a time. So when I'm in something, I'm in it. So even now, as I'm recording this podcast episode, I'm here with you. I'm present to what I'm saying. I'm really in it with you. Half the time I've got my eyes closed. The other half, I'm just my eyes open and I'm just really feeling what I'm saying. And I'm not allowing myself to, look around and be distracted by things. And I'm sure you could hear it if I was, you know? So let's, you can feel the energy when someone's present. So it's really lasering in. Allow yourself, relax around it. You can get to everything else. And the more you slow down, you actually get more done. So I know when I slow myself down, by the end of the week, I've actually covered a hell of a lot more. The more speedy and racing around I am, it's like being a headless chicken. You don't really achieve that much, and your energy just burns out. And been there, done that. It's so not worth it. So, making a decision or decisions about what's just your next thing. What do you need to do today or this week or this month or quarterly, whatever works for you. And then schedule it if needed. If it's not something you're doing in this moment, schedule it in so you can relax. You've decided, you've tuned in, you can schedule it in knowing you'll come to it. So I repeatedly do that. I know that maybe if I come up with 3 or 4 really juicy things that will help me shift forwards, I'll look at my calendar and know that, okay, maybe trying to do all of those things this week isn't so practical. So I'll diarize a couple for next week. I'll give myself time. And then off the back of that, actually take the action, really take the action. So it's just worth saying, right? Because often we schedule things in and then we see it pop up and then maybe we don't prioritize, we let other things just pull us away. So actually take the action and know why you're doing it. So come back to being really intentional. Remind yourself why this decision, this action point is the thing that's really going to serve you. So know why you're doing it. And this helps because you've tuned in. You're not doing it just because experts told you or you've seen 3 people on Facebook do it this way. No, really know why you're doing it. Check in, see how it feels to you. Does it feel good? Even if it brings up a little nerves, this is okay. But does it feel fundamentally aligned? Does it feel like if you were to do this, this is really part of you being you now? That's really important. And then finally, just making sure you support yourself as you go. So when you're being intentional with your actions, supporting yourself, because a lot of the time you're going to have that voice that comes in and tells you you should be doing something else. You're going to have those doubts come in, or you're going to suddenly see someone do it in a different way or do the other thing that's trending right now. So you really need to support yourself as you go. So it enables you just to stay on track, move forward in the directions of your choosing, really making sure you're tuned in and you're really being intentional with what you actually want in your life or business. So I hope that helps. I hope that helps just bring your focus back in, getting really intentional. And you don't have to do things just because everybody else is doing them, and if you need to just shut out the noise, tune into you. I do this all the time and it really, really works. So, on that note, if you're needing help with any of these areas, whether you need help with, I don't know, getting the clarity in the first place, being able to tune into yourself, maybe you are being distracted, maybe it's difficult for you to do that, or making the decisions, or staying on track, or even figuring out the actual action steps. If you're needing help with any of this, send me a message. It's what I do, it's what I help people do. I'm all about the inner transformations, the action taking, blending them together in life and or business. So reach out, send me a message. We can always explore ways that I can help you. I have many different ways we can work together if that is something that you are needing. So send me a message, feel free, and let me know how you felt about this, and any thoughts or feedback, you know where I am. So I wish you a lovely, intentional, action packed, but very aligned rest of your week whenever you're listening to this. Take care, and I will speak to you again in the next episode.